Welcome, everyone, to Edison TV. I'm Puya Hamami, Senior Healthcare Analyst, and with us today is Zach Henderson, the CEO of MindMaze Therapeutics. Thank you for joining us, Zach, and introducing the MindMaze Therapeutics story to Edison TV. Right now, the company is at a pivotal inflection point, given its recent push to commercialize its novel digital neurotherapeutics across the U.S. Please provide an overview of how the company's proprietary digital neurotherapeutics platform and solutions aim to improve care and outcomes following neurological events such as stroke and traumatic brain or spinal cord injury.
Can do, and thanks for having me, Puya. From our perspective, the core clinical problem we're solving is a well-documented gap between what science recommends and what actually gets delivered. Medical guidelines call for high-dose, high-intensity rehabilitation after brain injury because the brain, unlike other organs, is a learning organ that responds to this type of intensive training. Yet the problem is staffing constraints and patient fatigue routinely prevent that intensity from being achieved in practice. So MindMaze Therapeutics exists solely to close that gap. We've built a precision neurotherapeutics ecosystem, we like to call it, combining MindMotion Go, IZAR, and MindPod that delivers high-dose, high-intensity training through engaging gamified therapy. The platform is designed to scale without requiring proportional increases in clinical headcount, which our provider clients really appreciate. And as far as real-world results that validate the approach, in a recent 2-year, 5-site quality improvement program with Vibra Healthcare, which we presented at a poster during the American Society of Neurorehabilitation annual conference, patients using our platform achieved statistically significant greater functional gains than matched controls across every single Vibra site of care, while averaging 60% more therapy per day, all without adding to the staffing burden. As far as background on the business, we're headquartered in Lausanne, Switzerland, listed on the SIX stock exchange, symbol MMTX, and we're focused on the commercial scale-up, particularly in the U.S., with a team of approximately 51.
And how large are these targeted end markets?
So if you look across the continuum of the disorders that we treat, neurological disorders, NLDs, represent an enormous and growing global burden. They're the number 2 cause of death globally and the number 1 cause of disability. The related costs, healthcare costs, exceed over $1 trillion USD annually. So the scale of the problem is massive, and it's driven by 2 compounding macro trends. First, as populations age, incidence of these neurological conditions rise. So 1 in 6 people globally will experience an NLD in their lifetime. Secondly, the supply of qualified therapists is flat to shrinking, and burnout is accelerating with attrition and other workplace losses. So these trends combined, especially with the aging of the population around the world, compound the neurological care burden, and thus, like I said earlier, because the brain requires this intensive repetitive training to recover, the systems that we rely on today, the standard of care, quote unquote, simply is not equipped to deliver the amount of high-dose, high-intensity therapy at scale, which is exactly the gap that our platform is built to fill.
So ultimately, despite the recommendations by recognized treatment guidelines, stroke or TBI patients, as you mentioned, are not getting or not receiving the intensity of rehabilitation therapy required to maximize their recovery. So how can MindMaze's platform provide a solution?
So there are 3 structural barriers. The first is staffing constraints. Constraints simply limit how much supervised therapy a facility can deliver. There's just, frankly, not enough therapists. Also, a great number of patients live a significant distance from a suitable facility, e.g. they're rural. Many patients live 50 to 100 miles away from a rehab facility, and they cannot get in each week that they need. And then finally, there's an element of patient fatigue or lack of engagement that if you don't have a compelling solution, that limits how much patients tolerate before they disengage. So these three barriers together create a ceiling well below what the clinical evidence recommends. Thus, the majority of the population isn't treated according to the clinical evidence. So our platform addresses all of these structural barriers simultaneously. It's a gamified, software-driven training model delivered through MindMotion, MindPod, and IZAR that sustains patient engagement across all of the sessions, from the inpatient to the outpatient to the home. And because 80% of the training time is self-directed, therapists are freed up to supervise at scale rather than deliver the synchronous one-to-one care and rehab facility that is the standard. Normally, during a session, the therapist is with you 100% of the time. But with a MindMaze session, it's very different because the technology is facilitating, helping to deliver the treatment. And importantly, in addition to inpatient and outpatient sessions where the treatment can occur in the clinic, MindMaze also supports an at-home model, which greatly helps the scale. So the Vibra Healthcare Real-World Evidence Program, which I mentioned earlier, is a good example. It's the clearest proof of what we're doing. So across five inpatient rehabilitation facilities, we call them IRFs, and 210 patients in our MindMaze cohort, our technology delivered an average of a 60% increase in additional therapy per day, which is about 6.2 incremental hours per patient, with patients training on 75% of the enrolled days, and 77% reported that the technology improved their mobility. Crucially, this was achieved without adding one headcount to the staffing model. This is why we say MindMaze Therapeutics solutions are scalable. Our platform is architected across three layers. There's the neurotherapeutics, MindPod and MindMotion, which deliver the clinical intervention through the functional games. The second is assessment and monitoring. So it's hardware and sensors to measure gait, balance, cognition, hand strength, dexterity, etc., all to inform the clinician. And then finally, three services, which underpinning all this is an AI-driven platform integrating all of these above data and providing insights back to the therapist, insights back to the health system, and then assisting in workflow automation.
Has the platform received the necessary regulatory approvals to permit commercialization in major markets such as the US or Europe?
Yes. In fact, our digital neurotherapeutics are classified as software as a medical device, which, first of all, subjects them to a rigorous regulatory review in all of the markets where we operate. We've obtained more than 12 regulatory clearances to date and are continuing to expand. So example, in the US, MindMotion is a registered Class 2 device under the FDA 510K exemption pathway. In Europe, it is CE marked under the EU Medical Device Regulation, MDR, as a Class 2A device. And it reflects, the rigor of the MDR framework and how MindMaze's platform addresses that clinical rigor that it demands. And I guess we would say that these clearances aren't just commercial gating events. They reflect the body of the clinical validation that underpins each of our products. And they're also, even though it's great for the reimbursement or the clinical side, it also informs the reimbursement discussions that we have with payers and provides the clinical package of necessity that they require as well.
So as you mentioned, MindMaze effectively offers a full suite of solutions that span the continuum of care from acute inpatient facilities to outpatient centers and at-home rehabilitation. How would this portfolio offering and breadth be different from competitors, and how does this provide benefits for the company and for patients and providers?
So it's a good question. It's clear that we're the only company that offers the single integrated rehabilitation ecosystem across the entire continuum of care. So immediately after incident, when the patient is in an acute care hospital and the inpatient maybe move to an inpatient rehabilitation facility, going to outpatient clinics for their care, and then discharged to home. We offer the entire solutions around across the entire continuum. That's very important because this sustained high dose, high intensity therapy is absolutely required by the clinical guidelines. But if you don't have solutions that are portable, can be deployed across multiple environments, you can't meet those needs. And especially across multiple neurological conditions like stroke, TBI, SCI, and Parkinson's disease. So the competitive landscape is fragmented by design limitations similar to what I'm talking about. So some other approaches only address one modality, like let's say upper limb or only the hand or only gait, but no one does it all together. And there's also robotic systems out there that we are sometimes compared to, but they're very hardware heavy and frequently clinic bound. You can't take, a 2,000-pound robot home. And then standalone assessment tools or scales that are sometimes used, they don't offer the neurotherapeutic side. They don't offer the treatment. And then home exercise programs typically aren't as engaging and they lack the structure and intensity of a clinical HDHI protocol. So there's many competitors out there that play in each of these individual areas, but no one puts it together holistically. And that's what the breadth of our platform creates, which of course compounds the value for the providers because they can use it across their entire continuum of care. Think about a health system having hospitals, IRFs, SNFs, skilled nursing facilities, home health relationships. They can deploy it across everything. Vibra is a good example where they have many different types of facilities and deploy our technologies across all of them. So it's operationally viable at scale. It's not just theoretically a treatment in one of those areas or modalities. And then for patients, I'd say continuity of care matters. If you start in the hospital right after your incident, and then you can continue with that same technology throughout the entire continuum, the entire care journey. That's very supportive to the patients. The patients understand and they're used to the technology. They embrace it because what we know is recovery doesn't stop at the hospital discharge. It continues well beyond in the home and the outpatient settings. And that's exactly what our platform is designed to do.
And what have clinical studies shown for MindMaze's solutions in terms of improving outcomes after events such as stroke, TBI, or even a Parkinson's disease?
So to date, we've completed 27 clinical studies across stroke, Parkinson's, at-risk aging in both in-clinic, outpatient, and home settings. So quite a body of evidence, to say the least. These have demonstrated statistically significant improvements across all standard clinical endpoints, whether it's upper limb function, gait improvement, reduction of fall risk, and even cognition improvements. It's not just the physical side that's important in what we do. So in our clinical studies, we've consistently observed that we can deliver approximately 7x the number of therapy doses than the routine standard of care across that entire continuum. So in a word, scalability, that's what our clinical studies have also shown. I'd say the most recent, frankly, comprehensive evidence comes from the Vibra real-world program that was just presented at ASNR, which showed statistically significant improvements over matched controls at very large scale in both mobility and self-care GG scores across every site of care. Every single site of care that Vibra deployed us at saw statistically significant improvements. And we match that with higher community discharge rates, meaning that patients return home faster than the standard of care, which is obviously great for patients. It's great for payers. It's great for the entire ecosystem. And then finally, we've quantified the economic impact in detail. So, delivering 36 hours of active training over the typical 8 to 12 weeks through conventional means costs about $1,900 per patient. With our platform, it costs $340. So that's an 80% reduction of costs per patient per incident. And the model works because 80% of the training time is self-directed. It's not one-on-one consuming the entire physical therapist or neurologist resource. And 80% of those supervised sessions can even be managed by technical staff rather than qualified therapists. So we optimized what is obviously the most constrained resource in the system, the provider, and give them time back while elevating the standard of care. So it's a win-win there as well.
Hmm. And so as we talk about payer discussions, please provide us some insight on how MindMaze's commercialization strategy is evolving in the United States, including how the company's attainment of a unique U.S. CPT Category 3 reimbursement code for home-based therapy can facilitate uptake.
Sure. So this will be a little more complex, but I'll try to break it down into stages. So um, our U.S. strategy is built around this structured 5-step plan, of which 3 steps have already been completed by MindMaze Therapeutics. So now, with that foundation laid, we're positioned to scale. So step 1 was establishing the clinical credibility. So we partnered with Johns Hopkins, Mount Sinai, and others to create this clinical validation with leading neurologists and physical therapists known throughout the world. Their validation gave us the evidence base and their institutional endorsement to approach health systems and specialty clinics with credibility. Step 2, as you mentioned, was obtaining the Category 3 code from CMS for at-home use. This is strategically significant because it creates a flywheel. When we sell into the clinic for their use in the facilities, the physician can then prescribe at-home continuation using the same platform. So it goes back to my answer on continuity of care from across all settings. Thus, this opens for the provider, the health systems, a new revenue line, a reimbursable proven revenue line for the provider and thus for MindMaze Therapeutics. And thus we're trying to align the incentives from a structural standpoint so that everything is in line. Step 3 was important by deploying with Vibra across 5 of their inpatient rehabilitation facilities across multiple states and 210 patients in just the MindMaze cohort. There were hundreds more in the control cohort. And this is effectively a large-scale, massive real-world evidence study. So we deployed our operational playbook, which we can now improve upon and replicate. So how do you implement an HDHI clinical program across different sites, different patient populations, states? How do you bill for it? How do you generate consistent clinical outcomes, et cetera? And then at the ASNR conference I mentioned, we presented those results, which again saw these statistically significant GG score improvements over the control cohort, 60% more therapy per day, higher community discharge rates. So all that was validated in the Vibra real world model, not in some, controlled clinical trial. And that was an important 3rd step. Now, the next 2 steps are replicating this playbook with other providers and health systems at scale, as well as converting our Category 3 code to a Category 1 code and continuing our conversations in progress, bringing on more and more payers. So while we're compiling evidence, the evidence necessary, as with any Category 3 code, in achieving the broader reimbursement, it's important to note that our entire business model is not reliant on this conversion from Category 3 to Category 1, because there's many different value drivers that we provide to the health systems, not just the reimbursement code. So by enabling providers and health systems to scale their patient volumes with the same amount of resources, holding those personnel costs consistent, the economics are positive even without the billing opportunities. The billing opportunities create even more potential revenue. Uh, Thus, the ROI is very compelling.
And beyond internal commercialization efforts, the company's precision neurotherapeutics platform appears to have caught the attention of larger pharma or medtech companies. Are you working on potential partnerships or licensing opportunities? And what would these look like?
Yeah, sure. So the context is the CNS pharmaceutical and med device market exceeds over $100 billion US, approximately 60% of which falls within our therapeutic scope. And pharma's challenges in CNS are well known: high attrition in development, fierce competition, and in many cases, the strategic imperative to own the patient treatment pathway. We can actually solve all three of these. So we offer value to pharma at three different levels or models. The first is enabling data play strategies. So because the massive amounts of content our assessment and monitoring platform collects, we can induce support clinical trials with more precise, personalized endpoints beyond what the traditional self-reported scales might share. And we've delivered this for three of the largest global pharma companies over our past. The second is the pill or device plus strategy, which is effectively a co-promotion of the life science partner's product with our neurotherapeutics, which of course differentiates their portfolio. It creates a preference at the prescriber level because there's additional value being created, and it generates additional revenue for both parties. So we're in the process of announcing a collaboration with a large pharma partner and expect to disclose the details later in 2026. That's a good example of that pill or device plus strategy. And then the final is more of the beyond the pill strategy, which is actually co-developing combination therapies that pair our neurotherapeutics with the pharmacological treatment. Clinically, the combinations would improve outcomes, the typical 1+1=3 concept. Intellectually, though, it can extend patent protection, and commercially, it could be a blockbuster combination. So a good example is we've initiated a clinical trial at Johns Hopkins testing our MindPod in combination with a pharmaceutical product. And we have a separate trial going that assesses MindPod with a neuroepidural stimulation medical device. So you see how it's beyond the pill or beyond the device. And while these are early stage, they're strategically significant because it demonstrates that the combination of what we're doing with what the life science companies are doing can create value, and that's how they see it and how we're looking at potential partnerships.
And so these look like very exciting opportunities. Looking at the whole profile and your commercial operations, what would be MindMaze's expectations of reaching profitability, and will additional capital be needed for you to get there?
Good question. So right now, our cost bases are around $15 million, and we're maintaining a disciplined approach to our investment allocation right now as we scale. But the structural economics of our model are very scalable. Not only is it efficient for the providers, because 80% of the patient training is self-directed, the technology does the work, and the supervised sessions can largely be staffed by technical personnel. Our scale is very similar. As we scale our revenue line, our cost per patient does not scale anywhere close to the same slope. So we've set in place the foundation, and now it's just a matter of running more volume through that model. So as it relates to the profitability part of your question, we expect to reach break even in 2027, and are currently raising funds to bridge to that point. So we're actively engaged in investor discussions, and are sharing with them the story, the progress, everything we've been talking about today.
Well, thank you for that update. And so if you look at the whole process, the company's profile, in closing, what are some of the key milestones and catalysts that MindMaze investors should look forward to over the next 12 months or so?
Yeah. So yeah, to wrap up, I think the one meaningful milestone that we just released was a presentation of this large scale Vibra Healthcare real world evidence results at ASNR, which showed once again the statistically significant functional gains over matched controls across 5 states, 210 patients in the control cohort. So that's the foundation that for everything else that is going to follow and the milestones you asked about. So over the next 6 to 12 months, investors should expect progress across 4 different fronts. On the commercial side, we'll be signing additional provider group agreements to replicate the Vibra playbook, like I mentioned earlier, and announcing our pharma partnership. And while we alluded to this in the 2025 annual report, we've signed an agreement to open a provider and patient experience lab at the Pearl Healthcare Innovation District in Charlotte, North Carolina. There, we'll host clients and partners to showcase our existing product line as well as some of the new innovations coming through in R&D, and we can talk about that at some other time. The second area is clinical and regulatory progress. So we'll get readouts from the Swiss Neuro Rehab and the France React AVC studies, which will, of course, support our European reimbursement. We'll make continued progress on our U.S. reimbursement. I feel like there's a new update, a new payer that grants us coverage every day. We'll have finally, we'll have interim data from our combination therapy trials, whether it be the pill plus or the device plus with our MindPod products. Financially, you'll see us closing our current fundraising round to provide that bridge, and then powering towards the 2027 break-even point. And finally, from a corporate standpoint, you'll see additional announcements that we've forecasted already on the potential post-merger integration activity and building our leadership team, especially as we bolster our activities and our team in the United States.
It sounds like a very exciting time for MindMaze. And so I'd like to thank you for joining us, Jazak. And we definitely look forward to hearing more updates on the company's progress over the coming months and year. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Puya. Great to be here.